I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network, chatting with writers and authors who offer an added perspective for our listeners. This is Color Between the Lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this edition of Color Between the Lines, I continue a conversation with Sarah Cruzan, a woman who, as a young teen, was forced into prostitution and after years of rape and abuse, killed her pimp. We pick up our conversation where Sarah talks to me about after she was given parole and she was released from prison. She wrote a lot about this transition in her book, I Cried to Dream Again, Trafficking, Murder, and Deliverance. And she explained to me that there was a lot she had to learn about the world after her release. After the day when you stepped out, you said it was not an easy transition. Can you talk about why that transition to freedom was difficult?
So there was a lot of distrust that was just kind of like catapulted my way. I thought that I would have an opportunity for my family to come and pick me up from the prison and kind of have a gentle drive, home or wherever I was going to go. That didn't happen. There was a lot of, I don't even know how to even word it, but there was a lot of political play, I think, when it came to my case. High profile cases are handled different. And again, I had no idea what to expect. And 3:30 in the morning, being rushed through. It was a rush. I just had to hurry up and get out, get in the van. They transferred me over to two parole officers. I think it was in Bakersfield. And then they took me to Irvine. And while I'm in Irvine, they'll do the intake and the photos. And the next thing you know, like that evening, my photo that I just took at the parole office was on the news. And they were highlighting the fact that I was out. And, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no comparison, right? Like, there's no way my brain can comprehend that would be even a possibility that was going to happen. So I got scared. And so the fear, I was like, oh my gosh, scared to death. Even when we went to the beach, the parole officer's like, you cannot go 50 miles out of your radius,
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And we were at the beach, and I think we were like a little bit over a mile or two, and the helicopter was going over the beach, and I was like, they're here for me. They're saying, no, I'm here. Like, we have to leave. Wow. And not only did my fear affect, the transition, but those around me got scared and freaked out too. Yeah. Like, didn't know what to do, So, and I think that set the trajectory of what my life was going to be like transitioning into the community. Really.
It's worry that you're going to
make the wrong
step.
Oh, 100%. It just heightened. What it did was it awoke the fear-based survival thinking that I had prior to going into prison. So it tapped into that person, right? That arrested development psychological space that I had was now, I'm 34, 35 years old now, and now I'm also 12.
Yeah.
In fear.
So what do you think that other women like yourself need when it comes to helping them with that transition?
The time to develop a sense of safety, and not just a safety plan, but a sense of safety, and that whoever is going to be a part of their wraparound services or their support team knows the person. There's a relationship, and it's one that's not based on any kind of agenda or like cause, but individualized, and also to include the family. What are the family's needs when we're coming home? You just don't show up and be like, hi. Yeah. People have been separated for so long. And I really think it would be a beautiful space to see these type of approaches of radical love being invested and created while the individuals are already incarcerated from the very beginning. And to have a survivor advocate, a victim's advocate, Absolutely. You know?
Yeah. I can see what you're talking about. Someone that can guide the way when they get out so that they're not traumatized when they do, and trying to figure out everything at the same time, still dealing with their emotional pain and everything else at the same time, all at the same time. You've been out since
All at the same time.
Yeah. You've been out since 2013. That's 9 years. But this year, you were pardoned by California Governor Gavin Newsom. What was it like hearing that news? And what does that exactly mean for you?
So I heard the news when I was on the freeway, and it was like, it was awesome. You know, I'm grateful that he was able to do that. I have some clarifying questions though, because, you know, I had to do the research on what a pardon actually means, you know, and it says forgiveness according to like what I read, the law. But what I saw in my certificate was clearly that I'm not forgiven for my crime that I did. And it's like, that's cognitive dissonance. So I have just kind of put the certificate away until I can make amends with that whole situation. You know?
So legally it doesn't change much. Are you saying, is that what you're saying?
Okay, so on a personal, like, to my heart, to the moral injury then,
yeah,
it doesn't change much because I'm still not forgiven in the eyes of the government. It's almost still saying, like, you were still the really bad girl, you know?
Yeah.
With policies, I don't have to include the fact that I was a convicted murderer. I don't have to lead with that, right? Like, so it's not going to have an issue like if I decide to buy a house or rent an apartment or something, you know?
Right.
But morally, it's just still different for me.
Yeah, I from my research, when I was looking to see if it was meaning that it sponged it from your record, and that is not what happened. And I was like, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I was looking for that, and that's not what was that's not what happened. But
no.
Yeah. So why was it important to I'm reading I read all the way to the end, the very last page, the very last line, and for me it was kind of shocking for me when you got to the end and you confronted Roosevelt, which was one of the people in your life that also took advantage of you when you were 12. And I was like, why did she go find this person? And I wondered to ask you, why was it important to confront him? Many people would have wanted just not to see a person who abused them again, but you wanted to.
So, yes, and I'm glad you brought that in because I think that Stockholm Syndrome is one of the bases of my thinking and my behavior choices. So, and that goes with being indoctrinated and falling in love, you know, in these spaces, or you believe that you love the abuser. So the Stockholm Syndrome piece about it. But then, like, it's really difficult because the humanity aspect of it is like, oh my God, like you're supposed to love and forgive. And that feels like really good and light to your heart when you do that. So yeah, there was a sense of kindness about him. And it's almost like, I know what it feels like to have these weights on you and to carry it. And I wanted him to know, like, I forgave him. And not pass that pain on to his children or his grandchildren. And it was okay, you know, because even though he was in his 20s, I could only imagine what happened to him in his youth. And so there's compassion. And it was really powerful because it was like seeing this deep sense of gratitude for him moving forward in his life, you know, and those kind of moments happen in prison all the time, but at a more concentrated space, You know, you learn to love those who cause you the most harm in a concentrated space.
It was a very powerful moment, definitely part of the book. I when I was reading it, I was hoping that the response was going to be the way it did, because it could have gone left. And I wondered if you considered that when you had confronted him.
Oh, no, because we weren't in. No, I didn't. I just had faith and it felt right, and we just did it.
Like I said, my hat is off to you. I truly believe you're one of the strongest women that I've read about, to do something as brave as that. And it was a beautiful moment at the end of the book, definitely. These days you're doing advocacy work for other women. You recently were awarded a fellowship with an organization called Human Rights for Kids. Can you explain what you're doing with this organization and how others who are interested might be able to help?
The Stoneleigh Fellowship comes out of Pennsylvania, and it's awesome to be able to work alongside Human Rights for Kids. And it's just like, okay, so the fellowship reflects in their mission is to improve the life outcomes of the community's youth, right, by advancing change in the systems that serve them. And their priorities are rooted in youth justice, child welfare, education, and health. Being an inaugural fellow, my solution-focused shares are to develop and create a fellowship program tailored to support those with the lived experience who want to become professional advocates for justice reform, and establish a supportive network for currently and formerly incarcerated child sex crime survivors that's tailored to meet their specific needs, and to kind of just offer a healing space for agency and healing while we're able to educate policymakers, key stakeholders, and help build a network of survivors in Philadelphia and nationally.
What would you say to those who might be interested in helping? They really have a heart to try to do something positive. If they wanted to do something, I mean, is there, I don't know whether that's writing letters or whether that's, what is it that you're looking for?
Well, I'm definitely looking for open opportunities to create the space to have the conversation, so that we can do like community forums to like, okay, highlight, this is what's really important in this particular part of the community. What is it that, do a needs assessment and understand how we can create change based on that. And, that's kind of where we're at right now. So the first year of the fellowship is to kind of get familiar with everything, build relationships, do capacity building. So if anyone is interested, I just want to suggest they can go to the website for the Stoneleigh Foundation and also Human Rights for Kids and send a contact, and we could definitely just follow up from there.
Well, I want to leave the last, I always leave one thing open for the person who I interview with such an intense interview like this. Is there something that I might have missed that you wanted to add?
Just would like to thank you for that. I just want to highlight that as an organization with Human Rights for Kids, that our job now is to protect our children within the United States. And what that looks like for us is that we're going to do what we need to do to identify the mistreated children within our system, hopefully create spaces that can kind of rebuild the broken cultural belief windows that create harm, and instead of harm, create healing, and talk about the exploitive indoctrination. And I ask anyone who's listening, are your actions exploiting others, whether that be race, whether that be a belief, whether that be culture? And just to really reflect on that and how we can best create safe spaces to heal.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with me on the BIN and the audience about your mission and your new book. I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
That's Sarah Cruzan, author of I Cried to Dream Again, Trafficking, Murder, and Deliverance. That's it for this edition of Color Between the Lines. I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.